And this is true for our students. They were growing up in a world where computer science and technologies and everything that they do, and they want to learn computer science. You talk to kids, and 100% of them want to study computer science in some way. Now, I'm not saying everyone should be a programmer or a computer scientist or software engineer, but understanding computer science, understanding computational thinking, understanding design work, understanding the role that computer science plays in whatever products and services and whatever you develop is absolutely critical. And most kids want to study computer science. And most parents want their kids studying computer science. We did a study with Gallup, and we saw that 9 out of 10 parents want their kids studying computer science. And yet only 1 in 4 schools offer computer science to their kids. And this is also an economic thing here too, because yeah, we want kids graduating from college, but do you know that computer science graduates make 40% more than regular college graduates? Here in Michigan, I looked this up last night. Here in Michigan, I'm not picking on Michigan or talking about Michigan specifically other than that we're here, but the average salary for computer science jobs in Michigan is $78,000 a year compared to $48,000 for the average salary in the state. And again, staying with Michigan, thinking about computer science, and this is true no matter where you go, here we are thinking about and talking about the future when the future is here today. Today, right now, there are 15,000 computer science jobs available in this state. 15,000 jobs available. And yet in this state, with the wonderful universities that it has, only graduated 1,500 people in computer science. We talk about STEM a lot, the whole idea of teaching kids STEM, yet don't recognize that 71% of the STEM jobs are computer science jobs, and only 8% of those graduates in STEM are in computer science. Out of those 1,500 kids that are graduating with computer science degrees, 15% of them are female. Today, this year, in 2015, about 500 kids in high school took the AP Computer Science exam. So we have to think about the role of computer science and what computer science does in our future, because it has become part of everything that we do, and technology has become part of education. We talk about computer science in education, we talk about technology in education, but we've been talking about technology in education for a long time. Motion pictures were going to revolutionize education. Television was going to revolutionize. All we had to do was put kids in front of Sesame Street and everything would be fine. And we've been talking about computers since the 60s. I took a computer class 100 years ago when I was in 9th grade. And I learned how to program in a language called BASIC. BASIC programmers out there? Woo, punch cards. I learned how to program in BASIC, and I wrote this program. It took about 5,000 lines of code. It took me about 9 months, and I made a bird fly across the screen on a Commodore 64. It didn't even look like a bird. So we've been talking about computers for a long time. Why is it different today? I'm going to give you a couple reasons why I think it's different. First, all the research that we've been able to gather about what good learning looks like, we can finally take advantage of. Like, we know what good learning looks like. We know how to make it relevant, how to make it engaging, how to personalize it. We know how our students can learn better. And technology is finally at the point where we can start taking advantage of that. We can finally start using technology to think about how to bring these things to light. We don't need to invent anything new. We don't need to go and create new research. We can just look at the research from the last 10 years and say, what is it about good learning that we know, and how can we use technology to bring these things to life? How do we bring education to the next level using technology, knowing the things that we know about what good learning looks like? That's first. Second is, unlike when I took that computer class in 9th grade 100 years ago, even though I'd never seen a computer before, technology's wrapped itself around the core of our lives, and we don't even recognize it anymore. For example, 1,000 people in this room, how many of you have not used technology today? How many of you have not used the web today? My favorite answer so far is, not me. I just checked my email. How long did this take us? How many of you bought an iPhone 7? A couple. Good. I'm kidding. My whole family has iPhones. The iPhone is 9 years old. The BlackBerry, God forbid you have a BlackBerry in your pocket. You're either embarrassed to have that thing and you keep it in your pocket, or you're proud and you pull that thing out. That's 12 years old. Do you remember we used to have to call the internet? No, like place a phone call to the internet, and the internet was busy. And you were okay with that. You're like, I tried to call the internet, it was busy. Did you try another number? Like we had different numbers you could call. And today, what's your expectation with technology? Right, teachers to me, the people working in education are the most patient, the most understanding people in the world. I can't even handle my own kids. That's why I have them every decade. And teachers are the most patient people in the world. And I've seen teachers turn into a mob at conferences when the Wi-Fi is too slow. I myself expect to be working at full capacity as I'm traveling at 40,000 feet and 535 miles an hour. I get frustrated when the Wi-Fi is too slow as I'm flying through clouds. And so we're the generation that was just kind of minding our own business when this technology thing just showed up and became part of our lives, and we don't even recognize it anymore. What does that mean for a generation of kids who don't know that the world existed before Google? Who don't know that the world existed before smartphones and tablets and laptops? Who don't know that the world existed before Wi-Fi? Tell a 10-year-old kid that you're going to go stay in a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi, and they're going to be like, what? Are we going camping? Where are we going? Yeah, I want to go. I got to go take pictures and post it on Instagram. I want to see this place. Now, it's important to point out, I'm not saying that this generation is different than our generation, that somehow magic has happened in the last evolution of humankind, and somehow they're born knowing how to do things that we can't do. You know, just because they're born with technology doesn't make them, give them the ability to use technology and do their homework and do all the things that we say to do at the same time. They do two things at the same time poorly, just like we do two things at the same time poorly. But how they think about learning is different than the way we think about learning, and we have to remember that. This generation of kids thinks about learning in a different way. If I put that picture back up, that's a picture of my 15-year-old when he was 13, coming into my office, showing me his lines of code, because he's teaching himself how to program. And this is QA. We're not even like, look what I've learned. This is like, hey, can you QA this for me because I don't know if I'm getting the code lines right. Never brought it up to me, never asked me. Him and his friends were running some server on Minecraft, some casino site, and I kept waiting for the FBI to break down my door. And he's showing me his lines of code, never brought it up to me, never asked me. I work at Google and he didn't ask me. They think about learning in a different way. We waited for people to teach us. We waited for shrink-wrap material with labels on it and certifications and all these other things. These kids just go learn. How do we take advantage of that? How they think about learning is different than the way we think about learning. And so what are the skills that these kids need to know in the world that they're growing up in? Growing up in a world where they don't know any different than technology. I'm going to put up a list of skills that employers say kids need. A list that won't surprise you at all because it's a list that we've been looking at for a very long time. This is the list. These are the skills. We did this with The Economist, and we talked to employers all over the world, and they said these are the skills that they're looking for. Problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. There's nothing new about this list. This is the same list from when I was a kid. But it's different because the role of technology and computer science is different in the world that we live in today. It's more important to have these kinds of skills because we don't know what the future holds. Out of those million computer science jobs, most of them haven't been invented yet. 60% of kids in kindergarten today are going to be working in jobs that don't exist. And so it becomes more important to focus on these skills. And what I think we need to do more than anything is start asking new questions with these skills. Start asking new questions about how we do things and separate two worlds, the old education world and the new education world. For example, one of the things that we ask kids all the time, maybe you ask this in your programs, but we ask kids this question all the time and it drives me insane. We ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? How are they going to know what they're going to be when they grow up when we've established that jobs don't exist yet? That question used to make sense when we had like 10 jobs, right? Like when we were kids, I'm going to be a firefighter, a police officer, an architect, an astronaut, right? Like we had like 10 jobs that we can say. We don't live in that world anymore. We're creating new jobs every day. So I think instead what we should be asking students is, what problem do you want to solve? What problem spins in your head? It doesn't have to be, solving world hunger. It could be, how do you make cars go faster? How do you make them drive by themselves? How do you make toasters actually toast? How do you make blenders quieter? Which is, you think, a problem that would have been able to solve by now. When you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up, you're really asking them, who do you want to go work for? When you ask a kid, what problem do you want to solve, you get closer to that magic triangle that Daniel Pink talks about in his book, Drive. When you ask a kid what problem you want to solve, you're asking them, what's your purpose? When you ask a kid what problem you want to solve, how do you want to solve it? And then the follow-up question, what do you need to learn to solve that problem? Who's solving that problem now that you can collaborate with? What's out there? What research is out there? What websites can you visit? What videos are out there? What blogs are out there? Who's doing this on LinkedIn? Who can you connect with? I mean, for kids who are out there who want to solve education as a problem, none of them have reached out to me. And I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. When we ask a kid what problem you want to solve, we get them closer to that magic triangle. That picture that I showed you is a picture of our Google Science Fair winners from a couple years ago. And the girl there in the middle is one of my favorite contestants. She had a problem she wanted to solve. She wasn't your typical science student. She had a friend, one of her best friends, lived in the Philippines. And by the way, speaking of that, we kind of make fun of our kids. For those of us who have kids, we make fun of our kids who have virtual friends, right? Or friends who live in other cities. And just because, again, we were stuck with the 5 kids who lived on our block, doesn't mean that these kids can't have friends all over the world. She had a friend who lived in the Philippines, and her friend didn't have electricity. And she was upset that her friend couldn't do homework and couldn't read at night. So she invented a flashlight that's powered by the heat of the human hand. And she's 15 years old. The capacity and capability that our kids have is tremendous if we open them up and give them a chance to solve the problems that they're interested in. So that's problem solving. Iteration is the next one. We often talk about teaching kids how to fail and learning from failure. Well, yes, I'm okay with that. But that comes from the old world where you either fail or you succeed. And we don't live in that world anymore. There is no failure or success. We just live in a world of constant and consistent iteration, always changing. If you used Google last night and used it again today, you used a different version of Google. We update Google 600 times a year. If you're using Chromebooks in schools or in your programs, the Chromebook team launches a new operating system every 6 weeks, not every 6 years. And that's just one company of thousands of companies that are living in constant iteration. And teaching kids that there are endpoints, that there are grades, that there is a stopping point doesn't make any sense. Teaching them how to continuously iterate and continuously get better at what they do is the world that we live in. And speaking of that, they also need to do it as groups. Because we often talk about collaboration in education, but we don't mean it. We don't. Education is a single-player sport. It's my kid who's responsible for grades, for tests, for assignments, and then we say, go work with others, good luck. We need to teach them how to really collaborate, how to ask good questions, how to listen. Real collaboration is the ability to build consensus and follow along with consensus. One of the key things that we look for at Google from an employment perspective is leadership. And what do you think we mean by leadership? Do you think we mean, hey, can you tell people what to do and they'll follow you blindly? No. Can you influence them? Can you motivate them? Can you build consensus? Real collaboration skills. And not to get cheesy on you, but there is something comforting in knowing that whatever I build, whatever I create, is only going to get better when I put it in front of my teammates. And taking my skills and my teammates' skills and building something is a lot more interesting than me worrying about whether I built something good enough or not. And then we want to make sure that we're building real digital leadership and focused on building their digital capabilities. Because, again, we assume that just because kids are born with technology, that somehow they just know how to use technology is a mistake. It's like saying, you know, we were all born with 18-wheeler trucks. We should all be able to drive an 18-wheeler truck. We need to teach them how to search, how to vet, how to make sense of information, how to be credible, how to create their portfolio, how to be safe, how to be private, all the things that make them a digital citizen. We need to take that and bring it to the next level and build digital leaders out of them. And if they're not learning how to do this in school, if they're not learning how to do these in the programs that we have, where are they going to learn how to do this? So we want to make sure we're focused on building digital leadership skills. Now, understanding that this generation is growing up with technology and growing up in a computer science world is important because this is all they know. But there are some interesting results because of that. We're starting to see more data about Generation Z, those kids that are between the ages of 4 and 18 or so, about what do they care about, what do they think about, what do they know, what are the things that they want to do, and we're starting to see some of that data come in and some of that research come in. It's pretty interesting. For example, 42% of them want to work for themselves. So here's an idea. Think about this, right? We're talking about preparing kids for the future or the future labor force, and you're all waiting for them, like, where is everybody? And they're working on their own. Only 11% of Americans actually own their own companies or do their own work, but 42% of Generation Z wants to do their own thing. And maybe that number was the same 40 years ago, but the difference is it's a lot easier to do it today. It's a lot easier to grab some laptops, some server space on Google or Amazon and launch your company. And I see it every day. And so what are the skills, if this is true, what are the skills that we need to start building for our kids in high school and in college? Entrepreneurship skills, financial literacy skills, business skills. Yeah, you can solve a problem, you can start your own thing, but you're still going to need to do these other things. 64% of them are worried about finding a job. Of course they are. Look at the world that they lived in. All they've ever heard, all my 15-year-olds ever heard is a recession and getting out of a recession. We've been in this recession, what feels like, for 15 years. That's all he's ever heard. Think about 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, all they've ever seen is their parents struggle with jobs or losing their jobs. They've seen their brothers and sisters, if they got into college, come back from college and not find a job right away. So they're worried about those things. They're worried about jobs. They're worried about what the outcomes are going to be. You know, we went to college. Most of us went to college. Most of you are working in jobs that have nothing to do with your college degree, right? Right? We went to college, and we knew we'd be okay on the other side of college. So it didn't really matter what we majored in. These kids don't see that. They see things differently. A lot of them spend a lot of time online. 52% of them play at least an hour of video games a day. And again, we make fun of what video games are because We grew up playing Pac-Man and Pong, right? And those are the most mindless, stupid things you've ever seen in your life. These kids aren't playing Pong. These kids are playing strategy games, collaborating with people all over the world, building things. It's a completely different experience. How do we take advantage of those skills that they're building? Spending that time that they spend online. 81% of them believe that college degree is very important, compared to 72% of the general public who believe a college degree is important. And I can't look into those numbers, but I bet you that 72% of general public who think that college might not be important are usually people with college degrees. So they see college as an important thing, but they want to change what it is that we're offering in college because they see what the future is. They want to be able to build internship programs into their college degrees. They want to be able to build their own system. They want to actually design what their college looks like, what their college experience looks like. And the thing is that, this is a generation that's used to customizing things, right? Again, we went to the store, we went to Foot Locker and bought sneakers, right? These kids are like, what? You go to Foot Locker and buy sneakers? I order my sneakers and I design them and color them and do everything that I want. This generation is used to customizing things and building things. So how do we create programs like that for them so that they can customize their learning and their education experience so it makes sense for them? And then finally, a good chunk of them, 80% of them plus, are looking at colleges and programs as a outcome-based solution. What comes out of that experience? What job am I going to have at the end of that? Not just college. What's my employment going to be? What is it that I'm going to do with the skills that I'm going to develop? So we want to make sure that we're talking about outcomes and talking about a connection between the problems that they want to solve, the things that they need to learn how to do to solve that problem, and how they get that education to solve that problem. So what I think we need more than anything is a culture shift. It's a time to start asking new questions in education. It's a time to think about what we do in our classes and our programs and ask ourselves, are we talking about old education or new education? For example, we no longer have to be the Google in the room. And I get into debates all the time about, should we have kids memorizing things or not memorizing things? It's not one or the other. The answer is both. I have a 2-year-old. I want her to memorize things. Every night in the bathtub, tonight, if I'm lucky, I'll get home in time to give her a bath. And we have those letters that stick on the side of the wall, And I pull out the A, and I've been doing this for 6 months, and I pull out the A, and I go, what's this? And she goes, A. And I beam with pride because she's the smartest kid in the world. And then I pull out the B, and I go, what's this? And she goes, A. I'm like, all right, we'll work on that. I want her to memorize things, letters, numbers, words, things, multiplication tables. And then I want her to think about things at a deeper level, to understand the difference between things that she needs to memorize and things that she doesn't need to memorize. A couple months ago, back in February, I saw that 7% of Americans can name you the first 4 presidents of the United States. Ooh, the vibe in the room just changed. Because that was supposed to be a bad thing, and I can point to one of you and ask you to name me the first 4 presidents. And if you don't know, you're going to be embarrassed. And for the rest of the conference, people are going to make fun of you. Like, oh, look, there's a person who didn't know who the first 4 presidents are. Even though they didn't know who the first 4 presidents are. Or I can give all 1,100 of you 30 seconds, and all of you can tell me who the first 4 presidents are. Information has no value. Information is a commodity. Getting a kid to memorize the first 4 presidents doesn't make any sense. What is interesting is a question like, what would the United States look like if Thomas Jefferson was the first president? It'd be a significantly different country. What are the 3 things the first 4 presidents agreed on? What are the 3 things they disagreed on? Who won and why, and how did that shape our country? You get kids to understand things at a deeper level, and I bet you 20 years from now, they'll remember who the first 4 presidents are. It's understanding the kinds of questions that we can ask, given the fact that now we have technology at our fingertips. And we're starting to see this with models all over the world. We're seeing these collaborative learning models where kids are working together, and they're student-centric, and kids are driving the learning, but technology is there to support and enable what they do as a resource for them. And it's exciting to see this. And no matter where I go in the world, I see examples of this, and it's exciting to see kids being the center of the learning and driving the learning. Because I think what we need more than anything is iteration and innovation, that we're just constantly changing. We're not some big system change that needs to happen, but literally in our classes, in our schools, in our programs, that we just start doing things differently, and that we just get better and iterate and keep working on it. Because we've gone from this, to this, and not much has changed. And if all we do is put computers in our classrooms, in our programs, then all we've done is potentially take an old education and make it faster and more efficient. That what we really need to do is think about how to bring education to the next level. I'll give you a Google example. This is the original Google.com. Seriously, this is what it looked like. This is Larry and Sergey putting a bunch of machines together and saying, we're going to do computing in a different way. We're going to do distributive computing models differently. You don't need to go to Sun Microsystems and buy a mainframe server. We'll just do it this way. We'll buy a bunch of machines from Fry's, put them together, and do redundancy and computer distribution models and everything differently. And that's what it looked like. And then this is what Google looks like today. This is one row of the gazillions of rows of servers that we have all over the world processing data. And we do everything ourselves. We build our own hardware. We build our own software. We do everything is from scratch. It's all Google specific. All of us, we do ourselves. We don't buy anything off the rack. If we were selling our servers, we'd probably be the largest manufacturer and seller of servers. And there's 2 things I want you to think about. First, this is not what Google looked like on Monday. And then this is what it looks like on Thursday. This took 17 years of what we're talking about. 17 years of problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity. 17 years of doing those things to get us to this level. And the second thing is that this is not what a data center will look like 17 years from today. There is no future data center. It's just the next version, and then the next version, and then the next version, and that's the world we live in. Here's the good news. We are just getting started. We're at the very, very beginning of this. In 1995, 1% of the world was online. Just 1%. It took 10 years to get to the first billion people, 5 years to get to the second billion, and 4 years to get to the third billion. And yet today, in this world, only 40% of the world's population is online. We're at the very beginning of this. This, to me, is the most exciting time in history because of where we are today. And we're just getting started seeing new kinds of programs and new kind of education models in schools all over the world. And it's teachers and programs like you guys that are creating what those future learning models are going to look like. That picture that was just up is a picture of a school that I helped build in Phoenix, Arizona, called the Phoenix Coding Academy. And it's a new kind of school. It's an inquiry-based school. It's not a charter school. It's a regular public high school in the Phoenix Union School District. It's an inquiry-based school where kids are driving and learning through interesting questions. And computer science is the core language that they learn in everything that they do. It's not a computer science track. It's computer science with biology, and computer science with history, and computer science with art, computer science with English. Computer science as a language in everything that they learn.